Well, again, I'd like to welcome everybody. I hope you enjoyed last night. Jim will be here shortly, but again, I want to acknowledge Jim and Ann's support for the program. I think it was a great evening, and thanks to them, we were able to do that. So I hope everybody had a good time. I'd also, once again, like to extend appreciation and congratulations to our new members. Astellas, Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina, Covance, Hatteras, Venture Partners, Merck, and Publicis, sorry, I can never pronounce it properly, Healthcare. But I'd really like to thank you all for joining and your commitment to helping the people that work for you and moving things forward. I'd now like to introduce Marty to go through the business with us. So I'll give it to you, Marty.
Thank you very much, Bill. And again, let me echo what Bill just said, how grateful we are, not only for your attendance and participation, but for the spirit that you bring to the round table. There's a very important reason why at the outset, a decade ago, it was called a round table, because at a round table, everyone is at the head. And truly, I hope each of you recognize that and also see that there are microphones in front of every one of you. They're intended to be used because not only your voice, but your spirit behind that voice is what has propelled us to this point. And in the center of this room, as it has always been, there is and always will be the cancer patient. And I ask us just to focus on that as we begin this morning's 10th annual CEO Roundtable, that it's all about the cancer patient. Very grateful to you, Bill, for opening this roundtable. And as we said last night, and we'll reiterate throughout this morning, we are here because of the special dedication of very special people. And to my left is a very special person in Bill Weldon. We like to recognize our executive committee, for it is the executive committee's responsibility to represent the round table in its visioning, in its strategic plan, and then making sure that the rest of us execute on that plan. We're blessed with an executive committee consisting of our chairman, Bill Weldon, our chairman-elect, Chris Viehbacher, our founding chairman and immediate past chairman, Bob Ingram, Ed Hanway, and yours truly. We're also very grateful for the legal support and guidance who keeps one of us out of trouble most of the time, and that is, of course, Ann Vickery of Hogan Lovells. Again, a tremendous pro bono contribution by that world-acclaimed law firm. And we are also very grateful now to newly introduce the individual who is providing not only pro bono advice on all matters dealing with finance, but as comptroller pro bono and par excellence of the CEO Roundtable. And I'd like to introduce you and ask you to welcome Ken Lee of Hatteras Venture Partners. Ken, would you? Just a brief word about Ken. Those of you, and many of you do, not only are members of biotechnology, but know a lot about that sphere, will already know Ken. Because in a former life at Ernst & Young in the Bay Area, he was the first auditor of a small company at that time that was founding biotechnology as a space. That small company was Genentech. He was its first auditor. And it was then that they're recognizing presently as he did that this was an enterprise that had future, began actually what now has become a Bible of biotechnology, excuse me, and that is the annual report on biotech that he was the first editor of, and for the next decade grew to the Bible that it has become from Ernst & Young. And we're very grateful for your guidance. The CEO Roundtable, as you all know, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization supported entirely by your contributions. We do not seek outside grant support, nor do we make grants. We are self-supporting. And the purpose for which it is, as we said at the outset, is that cancer patient in the middle of the room. We're very grateful that Chris Wiebacher has been the chairman of the Finance Committee, and that Ken is, with John Dornan, our executive director, responsible for the maintenance of your finances, your contributions, making sure they are shepherded and used appropriately as you have intended. I can say it from on behalf of the executive committee that the finances are in order. And Chris, perhaps you'd like to make a comment. I hope you don't have any dissenting views.
No, thank you, Marty. Good morning, everybody. The books are indeed in fine shape. I think the interesting thing that we need to think about is we have built up a certain sum of money, and I think later on we can talk about where do we want to take the CEO roundtable going forward. So for me, the real objective is how can we best use that amount of money that we've been able to build up in the interest of cancer patients. But otherwise, all of the audit reports, and I think yesterday at the executive committee, Marty said, having Ken Lee do the books is a little like having Matisse paint your house. So I can assure you that the accounts of this organization are not enough to tax the extensive capabilities of Ken. Thanks, Marty.
Thank you very much, Chris. What is your expression, Bob? That we're
both in the case of our accounting help and our legal help in Ann and Ken, we are fighting well above our weight.
As Chris has just acknowledged, there has been a third-party audit, and it was an absolutely clean audit, as we're pleased to report. And now it is my pleasure to introduce to you somebody who needs no introduction, of course, and that is with regards to the Nominating and Governance Committee. One comment about that, and that is in terms of nomination in the Nominating Committee, as befits every really important organization, it clearly is essentially, in my view, the most important, because that's the future. When in nominating both members and, of course, members of the Executive Committee and officers, it is entrusted to this committee with the future of this organization. So that's where we're going to live, Bob, into the future, and I turn it over to Bob Ingram.
Thank you, Marty, and let me just say again, thanks to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. Certainly, I would add my thanks to that of Bill's, to Jim and Ann for last night. I just want to share with you all, and it's a comment about him. I get in my car to go home last night. It's about 9 o'clock, and my cell phone goes off, and I don't want to ever get arrested for talking on my cell phone and driving, but I answered it, and it was Coach K, and he just said, "Bob, was it okay?" And I said, "Mike, it was okay." And he wanted me to again let you know how proud he was to be here, but more importantly, how proud he was of all that we're doing. You're going to get the chance later this morning to interact and hear from my dear friend, Governor Hunt, who's sitting on my right. For those of you who don't live in our state, by the way, we welcome you if you want to move.
That's your law.
We're proud of North Carolina. This is the most progressive state in the South, and a lot of that is directly related to Jim Hunt's leadership. We've led the South since Jim first became governor, only four-term governor in the history of our state. And I can tell you, while I don't like labels, Jim is a proud Democrat. But he's a proud Democrat who works across party lines and who got the business community to be his partner, particularly in the support of education. And there's no one who has done more for education in our state, and I think many of you know education in our country, as a public servant than Jim Hunt. And he's not only our friend and our partner, but will be moderating a panel discussion later this morning. Governor Hunt, thank you so much for all you do. In addition to Marty and Bill's recognition of Ann and Ken for their very generous help on the legal and finance fronts. A lot of what any organization gets done is done through communications, and Judy O'Hagan has been tireless in her efforts. And I know Judy would want me to also recognize Nick Colucci of Publicis. Nick, this is, I know, your profession. I'm looking for Nick. Right here. Thank you, Nick. But we really appreciate not only your personal support, but the support of Publicis. Thank you so much. I'd also like to quickly thank some of the other members who have personally taken it upon themselves to really go above and beyond in terms of reaching out to their constituencies and their friends. And I probably will leave some folks out, but in healthcare today, and particularly as we advocate on behalf of the cancer patient we serve, the payer community is ever more important. And many of you work in that community, whether it be insurance companies or governmental payers. And we've had the benefit and ongoing benefit as we now move into the future, one of the real leaders in that whole industry and sector in Ed Hanway. And Ed, I just want to say thank you again for all that you continue to do as we go forward. And certainly when we think about government, and particularly areas like the Defense Department, Bill Winkenwerder has been tireless in terms of working with Marty and with Bill. You'll hear more about some of the specifics of that later this morning. He's not just always willing to pick up a phone, but willing to get on a plane or a helicopter and go wherever to communicate. And Bill, thank you again.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
Thank
I'd also be remiss if I didn't thank Viren Mehta. Viren is also a very long and dear friend. And those of you who don't know him, is one of the most successful investors in life science and a global person in every respect. And Bill has done many things for us, one of which is to get us to think more broadly. And while we sit here today largely focused on the United States, we have tremendous opportunities, and I would submit obligations to move beyond our border. And Viren has been helping spread the word about what we're doing in particularly Asia. And Viren, I'd like to thank you for those efforts. Coming back locally, and I will take the prerogative of our local location here. Earlier this year, I had the pleasure of attending what we've come to call a friend-raising reception hosted by my dear friend Victor Zhao, who, as you know, is the chancellor and leader of the whole Duke University medical system. And it was a great opportunity to share what we do. And Victor, as you would expect, convened a really great gathering of local leaders. And out of that, we have gotten several new participants in the roundtable. And Victor, thank you again for your leadership. Later this year, by the way, MD Anderson and the Livestrong Foundation will host similar receptions both in Houston and in Dallas. And I would just say, on behalf of Bill and myself, and certainly Chris, that going forward, these are the kind of things that we want to do more of, where we can bring more people into the organization and share with them what we're doing. And I look around this room this morning, and Bill, I can't help but contrast it to 10 years ago when we first convened. There were about 13 of us, most of us from the pharmaceutical industry. And today we're obviously much broader, much bigger, but there's still so many opportunities. And I'll close on that note. Marty made reference to our executive committee. We will be expanding that committee. In fact, we're looking at some candidates beyond just the traditional life science healthcare area to represent those industries, those opportunities on our committee. But I'd like to, before I turn it back to Marty, take a prerogative to thank Bill Weldon. I prevailed on our personal friendship in asking Bill to do this. And let me just say, everyone in this room is busy. Everyone. But imagine being the chairman and CEO of Johnson & Johnson, arguably one of the world's best companies. and Bill never hesitated. And he didn't just lend his name. He made a commitment. I suspect many of you in this room have gotten personal letters from Bill. I can tell you he has never been reluctant to not only make a call, both on the phone or in person, and the fact that we have grown as we have under his stewardship and leadership is testament to that commitment. What pleases me most is just this morning, Bill and Marty and I were having a conversation, and I'm proud to tell you, and I can't tell you, Bill, how grateful we are. Bill is turning the chair to Chris Viehbacher, but Bill has committed to stay involved, and not just in name, but in time and commitment. And that sets a role model example for me, for all of us. And Bill will continue to serve on the executive committee, on the nominations and governance committee. And more importantly, yesterday, as Ed and Chris will tell you, in our executive committee meeting, we were talking about some candidates that we would like to make sure we get involved. Bill took 3 quick assignments without even being asked. People like Phil Knight at Nike, just to name one. So, Bill, I just would like to say on behalf of all of us in this room, but more importantly, the patients that we, as you remind us frequently, are privileged to serve, we cannot say thank you enough. You embody the best of America. Marty, back to you.
Amen. We have 2 major reports that you're going to be receiving. Again, these reports are going to be not only presented, but presented for your discussion. And those will be the reports from the Gold Standard Task Force, chaired by Judy O'Hagan, and also the Life Sciences Consortium Task Force, co-chaired by Greg Kurt of AstraZeneca and Mace Rothenberg of Pfizer. Today, that report will be presented by Greg and colleagues from the round table. We're very grateful for both of those reports that we're going to be receiving shortly. Let me just take us back for a moment, really keying off of what Bill has reflected in the very best throughout the 3 years of his tenure as chair, and what Bob just characterized as the most important thing that each of us have to remember or should recall, and that is we're here in service, and by being leaders, the service that we're called upon is to serve patients. At the very origin of this enterprise was a need, an unrequited need, a nagging concern of parents who lost a child to cancer years and years ago. For it was 3 weeks short of her 4th birthday that the second-born child of George and Barbara Bush, a little tousle-haired gal by the name of Robin, died of acute lymphocytic leukemia. That death and the impact of it lives with those parents, as you would imagine, to this day. But it was in their post-presidential, if you will, as 41, as he often refers to himself, and Barbara left the public sector and became citizens, Bill, and 41 and Barbara, that they chose to devote their energies and whatever opportunity they could create to lowering barriers and to helping solve or providing opportunities for those who could solve major problems dealing with cancer. And that initiated the National Dialogue on Cancer that then grew and differentiated into what is now known proudly as C-Change. And Tom Keene here as our executive director represents that great organization that was founded by the 41st president and Barbara Bush. It was during that period of time when C-Change, as it was then called, the National Dialogue on Cancer, and I want to emphasize the word dialogue, was just finding its sea legs, that the president looked out at 164 members then of the dialogue and I was honored at that point to be seated to his right. And he remarked in passing, in a sotto voce fashion, you know, there are not many executives of some of America's great corporations in this room. Why do you think that is? But he answered his own question. He said, well, I guess CEOs don't do dialogue well. Now, there was important dialogue ongoing, to be sure, for there were dialogue amongst advocates and cancer center directors and governmental officials from the FDA and the NCI and the NIH. Truly important. But there was a sector, a vital sector, that was badly underrepresented. And then, as you know from last night's conversation, it was then that he chose to make a phone call to do something about that. And so it was that the CEO roundtable on cancer, and each of those letters and words means something important. It's CEO driven. Bill Weldon didn't lend his name to the stationery. He gave and dedicated his time and great talent and that of his corporation to making it different in the lives of those whose lives have been tempest-tossed by a diagnosis that says, you have cancer. It's the CEOs, it's you who drive this organization. And the table is round because every voice is just as important. And it's about on cancer. It's about doing something, in the words of our founder, the 41st president, that is bold and that is venturesome. And I submit to you that that's exactly what you have been doing. So it is in keeping, I think, with this 10th anniversary that we remember what we came from, where we came from, and why we were convened, why, in fact, we are here today. Because there is in the mind of every one of you, as there is in me, the face of a person who has either died of this disease, like Robin, who would be alive today. In fact, she would be giving grandchildren and maybe great-grandchildren to Bob and Barb, to Bill, sorry, to George and Barbara. You know I don't call them anything except 41. To 41 and Barbara, were she diagnosed 50 years later, because that disease has changed so dramatically because of care. So it is that I'd like, if I may, to ask us to look at the screen and to receive a very special greeting from our founder, the 41st President of the United States, George Herbert Walker Bush.
It's hard to believe that it's been 10 years since I hosted the first meeting of the CEO Roundtable on Cancer. It's also hard to believe how much progress has been made. The gold standard is making its way into companies large and small, touching millions of people. The LSC has proven how important it is to collaborate. The LSC's potential to help cancer patients has never been more real. There is still much work to be done, and I know you're working to ensure that our children and our grandchildren don't have to endure the heartbreak of this disease. But our progress and the promise of the future is worth celebrating. Keep up the excellent and important work. And thank you, Bill, for your dedication and leadership. And welcome to you, Chris, as our new chairman. I know you'll have plenty of support as you move forward. God bless each of you. And be sure to have Coach K continue to wear our CEO Roundtable golden lapel pin, just like I'm wearing mine.
As I hope privately you'll hear from Chris and from Bob and Bill when we have made presentations to the President on the status, as he says, what's the state of the union of the CEO Roundtable, and that happens at least once a year, that you'll hear about the impact and the commitment that the President and Barbara continue to have in this endeavor. Were his hips any better, he would himself be here, but as he did virtually, extend not only congratulations to all of you, but a continued call of your very best efforts on behalf of those patients. And with that, Bill, I turn it back to you.
Thanks, Marty. And I'd like to thank President Bush and Barbara Bush for their support. I mean, they really did put this thing together, and it's been extraordinary what the commitment they've made to really helping patients with cancer. I think it's also, we're fortunate that the administration today also has that same type of commitment. And we're lucky that there is a opportunity for us to support and help the administration in advancing cancer and working together. And I think we're very fortunate to have Nancy Ann here with us today. Nancy Ann DeParo, I spoke about her a little bit last night. And I think it's important for you all to recognize in her new responsibility as Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy for the White House, that her responsibilities have expanded greatly beyond just healthcare. Though she's probably one of the authorities, if not the authority, in Washington on healthcare reform and healthcare, and has worked hard, as we have, for patients, not just with cancer, but to advance healthcare for the people of America. But Nancy Ann said to me last night that her boss, I guess Bill Daley, asked her to go and do something else today. And she said she was coming here, and he said, well, fine, I'll find someone else, or I'll do it, or however it went. But he recognizes the importance of what we do and allowed Nancy Ann to be able to come. And I think we're really, really fortunate to have someone of Nancy Ann's background, knowledge, and expertise to come and talk to us. I do want to read, I said last night I could never do justice to everything Nancy Ann has done, but I'm just going to take a little snippet, and I am going to read it because I know I'll screw it up if I don't. But she's been a fellow of the Institute of Politics at Harvard's John F. Kennedy School of Government, senior advisor to J.P. Morgan Partners, a senior fellow at the Wharton School of Business of the University of Pennsylvania, trustee at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. There's no one better qualified to talk to us today about healthcare and about issues and whatever else Nancy Ann wants to talk about. So I want us to welcome Nancy Ann to talk to us about topics.